What'd you say, Russia? Russia what?
Oh, man.
Are you Russian?
I'm rushing to get over here into the thing. Is
Okay.
what I said. Yeah.
Okay.
Do you know? Okay, I'll do this. This will be on thing. Do you know? Oh look! That's horrible. I thought I had the volume. It said "Do not disturb" on there. So do you know why fire engines are red?
Oh, because we're putting out the Russian fires.
Close. Well, fire engines are red because books are red, and magazines are red too. And 2 and 2 is 4. 4 and 4 is 8. 8 and 4 is 12. 12 is a foot. A foot's a ruler. Queen Elizabeth's a ruler. Queen Mary's a ruler. Queen Mary's the ships. Ships sail in the sea. Fish are in the sea. Fish have fins. Fins fight the Czechs. Czechs fight the Russians. Russians are always red, and fire engines are always Russian. That's exactly how we know. And that's exactly the case against collusion. No, for collusion.
That was the most insane rant.
It's logic. It's
There's
logic. Irrefutable logic.
There's no logic whatsoever in what you just said.
Really?
It's not announced.
That's irrefutable.
Okay. There's not announced.
You follow that through. It's all makes sense.
That is the what is that fallacy called?
That's a truth bomb.
Yeah. Okay.
That's not a fallacy.
That fallacy is called what is it called?
What's that?
I want to say "if by whiskey."
If by whiskey, I mean I've been drinking a lot.
No,
You said I'm drunk. Is that
no, there's a fallacy called the "if by whiskey"
I
fallacy.
did not know that fallacy.
Have you ever heard that?
I gotta say I do not know that fallacy.
That is when you try to take both sides of an issue and never really give your position.
Well, I think it's more like a string of non-sequiturs.
Well, of course. Well, that's a non-sequitur. That's a fallacy in itself. It's a non-sequitur.
Yeah. But no, I don't think it's qualified. So I'm pretty sure if you
you
can go run back the recording later and you can
I probably won't
analyze that. That's beautiful.
I probably won't.
You have to repeat that later on a quiz, by the way.
Never happened.
Well, do you have any stories today, or do you have any things you want to start? I mean, I know there's obvious stuff. I have a few things. I haven't decided on what would be interesting or not. But I was gonna
pick up where we left off.
Oh yeah. You were starting a story last week, yeah.
On the Jason Riley story, and it's something that I've been thinking about for a long period of time.
So summarize again the story basically.
So Jason Riley is making the point that people who there's a view where a certain segment of people want to protect black people from any kind of criticism. They want to argue that blacks are being murdered and they're being taken advantage of by the system, but they will not critique what black people are doing, what we're doing to ourselves, and killing each other at a rate far greater than anybody else is killing each other, killing us, and killing our babies at a rate that is astronomical when compared to other people who are having children or having abortions. It's just crazy. And what Riley's major point was that we're not immune from criticism, number one, and the people who want to keep us immune from criticism are doing us a disservice. And it's a difficult situation. It's a difficult conversation to have with people because it's almost like you're airing dirty laundry. And I understand that. I mean, I grew up, like as I said many times, in Southwest Philadelphia, and one thing that we don't like to do is air our dirty laundry in front of people because it's a shame issue. It's a lowering ourselves or lowering our standing in the world type issue. But I think on some level that if we don't have these conversations out in the open, so that they can get sunlight, we won't progress, and we won't have a full orb picture of what is happening in our communities and what we're doing to ourselves. So Riley's point is always that we don't need anybody's help. We can take care of ourselves, and the only people who want to help us want to shield us from criticism, which is not good.
Or court the black vote to maintain power structures.
Well,
that's people trying to court, oh no, it's not your fault. We'll solve all the problems for you. so they can get votes. I listened to a conversation today. I won't say where from, but it was a panel of a bunch of like Christian folks, some academics, some pastors, and they were talking about, of course, the topic of the white evangelical vote,
right.
And the problem is that, put in somebody like Trump, but they kept bending over backwards and say, but this is not a political thing. We shouldn't be on one side or the other.
That's if by whiskey.
Oh, okay. How is that?
That is the if by whiskey fallacy.
Okay. Yeah, so they kept saying that, but it was interesting.
But they really were arguing for a point.
Yeah, because in the end, I never heard of a single example of where, if you're saying all, white evangelicals put Trump in, what about black evangelicals who
voted for Obama
in or
right.
voted for Hillary?
Right.
I mean, if the majority, if it's wrong for the majority of white voters to vote for Trump, why wouldn't it be wrong for? I mean, if both are equally not the solution, which is what the premise of what everyone was saying was, we're not about one part or the other. Why is it only finding fault on one side? Which there is legitimate issues, and I'm not saying there's not.
There are.
But I'm saying if the point is going to be a valid one, people have to say, like for example, in this one they said how, and I'm not as familiar with this part of the history, but I know that like how Republicans, they said how they court the racist sort of vote because they courted sort of the Dixiecrats,
right.
the disenfranchised Democrats who of the South. And they were sort of courted, and they're sort of, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. We won't acknowledge your racism as long as you give us the vote. And that's probably true to some extent. I'm not as familiar with that part of history.
I am. I can talk to that when you get
okay. You're welcome to do that. So, but my other side of it was thinking, okay, if that's true, we can be critical of that. But what about the history of eugenics support, of abortion within the Democratic Party that still exists today?
Sure.
Why isn't that the other critique?
Why is that equally?
Why is that not mentioned at all?
Yeah.
If the goal is to say neither political party is the solution, and that's what
because the subtle argument is the Republicans are racist, but we're killing you. That's what they're saying. The Republicans are racist against you, but we're killing you, and since that's not so bad, you should vote for us.
Yeah.
The whole point is, and I think Dinesh D'Souza did a great summary of this whole event. And what Dinesh D'Souza says, you can look at the statistics. As the South became less racist, at the same time the South became more Republican. Mm-hmm. He talks about this at great length in his, I believe it's the Hillary's America.
I haven't read it.
It's a great documentary. You should watch it. He does it's a documentary.
Oh,
yes,
right.
and it is a book. Right. But he does a great talk about how the so-called Southern strategy was.
Yeah, that was what was mentioned.
Was fallacious, and he takes in and I believe the guy.
He's saying that those who say the Southern strategy is real. He's saying that was that there was no Southern strategy.
What he's saying is there was no Southern strategy.
Court white racist.
First of all. You don't have to believe us. You can actually look at the voting rolls. One Dixiecrat out of the number of Dixiecrats that were in the South switched parties. The parties never switched. The parties were always Republicans, and Democrats were always Democrats. Only one Dixiecrat and all the so-called Dixiecrats in the South switched, and that was Strom Thurmond. Strom Thurmond was the only Dixiecrat that switched. So there was really no great switcheroo, which is, so-called the part of the Southern strategy. And there was no, even, I think the guy's name was Atlee Stevens or something like that, who actually was Nixon's Southern campaign strategist, who even came out at one point in time and acknowledged that there was a Southern strategy, at least in his mind, but he could not say definitively that was led by Nixon or whatever. But I mean, there's a great talk on that. You're not going to get the full orb discussion here, but you can listen to Dinesh D'Souza's Hillary's America, and he goes into great detail about that. But I guess here's a more valuable point. I think I went to church this last weekend, and they had a speaker come in, and the speaker was from Lebanon, and this Lebanon speaker was speaking about how we had accepted, refugees. We need to accept refugees into our country. and part of how the church portrayed bringing this speaker on, which I thought was he was really good. I mean, he had a great talk, was to show how members from the church were going to the refugee community and bridging the social gaps and bridging the language gaps. And as he was speaking, I was sitting in the audience, and I'm not bent on race. That's not really my deal. I'm just frustrated that we're talking about it here in 2018, and I'm not anxious about immigrants or anything like that. I'm just really not. I'm pro-American, but I think immigrants who come to our country need to come the right way. I mean, I think that's the extent to which I hold those issues. But as I sat and listened to him, and this goes to the whole point, I started to think to myself, we really need to listen to people and how they're trying to push us either to the left or to the right. Even in the discussion that you talked about, we really need to pay attention and ask ourselves, is our framework really a biblical framework for understanding these questions? Or are they merely political frameworks for asking and answering these questions? Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because if we're not paying attention, we're going to be pushed into a camp which is not really an accurate or biblical perspective, but is more of a political perspective on these issues. And I think that we really need to have and seek God's perspective on how we need to treat people that are coming in our country. And I'll give you where I concluded on this, because I really took a deep dive on it. Let's say that when it comes to illegal immigration, that one side wants to use illegal immigration to rob us of our right to vote. In other words, to dilute our votes. And let's say that the other side wants to use illegal immigration to lower our salaries. These two sides mean to use this issue against us, and we recognize that it's being used against us, and it causes us anger. We need to be careful not to direct that anger toward the immigrants, whether they're legal or immigrant or illegal. And we need to have a more biblical perspective. I think we ought to push for a reformed immigration policy that does its best to kind of solve some of these issues, whether it's limited or expanded or one way, or however you believe that ought to go. I think we need to think about it in those terms. But I think that we need to be very careful to separate how we feel about those people who are coming to our country for good or for bad, so that our reflection or our thought and our response toward those people are as God would have us. Because
so like what I hear you saying partly is, maybe phrase it this way, we have to divorce a little bit how we think about them as individuals, as human beings, versus how we think about the legal status of the process. So we can be upset and frustrated at, people are coming illegally or the whole process, whatever. Sure. But regardless of how somebody arrived, treating them with respect and dignity and the sacredness that they were created with and value.
Exactly.
And the broader important point, distinguish. That's and
what And the broader point is, even when it comes to these issues of abortion or whatever, we need to have a more biblical perspective on this. One that respects life rather than one that respects where a Republican or a Democratic Party stands. I think we really need to think that through, because I think that as a nation, our frustrations and our sense of ourselves as being pushed left or right. That people are using our anger and our hostility with the system to push us left or right, I think.
Yeah, I think that's one of the issues that, and I don't really care to get into the whole Trump-Russia thing at all.
Yeah, me neither. That's why.
But I do think one of the issues that is clear, I think most people would agree with, is that, part of that strategy for interference with elections has been to cause division and to sow seeds of discontent and anger and bitterness. Because I don't really think the Russians give a rip who wins or not wins, as long as they cripple those people, as long as they, marginalize them from at least half the other country, side of the country, that they get anger and people who, will say, oh, Trump is evil or Hillary's evil, and just get them to hate that person, as opposed to treating them with some sort of sense of respect or value just because they're in. And I think that in and of itself has been fairly destructive, because we see that
we're,
already. We're already bent towards it right now. Anyway.
Exactly. We're just growing angrier and angrier with each other, and we're not really talking to each other. And we may not at the end of it, we may not agree. We may still end up on different sides of the issue. But I need to respect the fact that other people are seeing the world differently than I do, even though I don't agree with them, and I think they're wrong, because they are.
Like Corey Marsh.
Like Corey Marsh. Corey Marsh is always wrong. If you're taking Corey Marsh's class, just start off, Mr. or Professor Marsh, are you wrong?
Leroy said you're wrong.
Leroy says you're wrong.
And that would be a good way to go.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of perception of the world, this is interesting. So I got this little thing, and it's out of the UK. Look at that, those girls. So these two, they're twins. You see that? I can't. I mean, I can show you, but you're not going to see it on the.
Well, you can actually pretty good. One's black and one's white.
You can see that? Yeah, I guess not too bad. But these girls are twins, and they're twin sisters, and one is, I mean, she's white as I am, and the other is, she's a little lighter, at least from this picture, maybe a little lighter skin than you, but she's definitely black featured with the hair and she's got those features, and yet they're twins. It's this whole idea that perception of the world. It's like, people would look at that and see the one and say, oh, you're privileged. Oh, you're not privileged. Oh, you're this or you're that. And we put them into these social categories
based on their outer features,
based on just that alone. Yet in truth, they're biologically twins. It shows you how insignificant, or in the philosophical term, accidental, the skin color is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that it's not an essential property of who they are. I mean, what's more important, that one's white or black, or that they're sisters?
Right.
I mean, and it's also, you look at, they came from whatever parents they came from, but, I don't even know the parents, but either way, you get one kid who's born from those parents that has white skin, one has black skin.
How does that happen? I'm still stunned. I mean...
Yeah. Well, the article doesn't really say, it just says it's amazing, but I'm sure if you look at, looks like they're fraternal, so they're
fraternal.
So the whole process when the egg is fertilized and when it's split, I mean, I'm guessing that somebody just got the.
So what I'm saying is, either the dad or the mom, either one parent is all the way white, and the other parent is mixed.
I suppose.
That's the only way that I could see that happening.
Oh yeah, because you're talking about which is the recessive. Yeah. I don't know.
That's very interesting.
I don't know, but it just shows you how that perception of our world changes. So it made me think of this other article I've been holding on for many, many months now. This was talking about higher education, and this one, the title of it was "First and Second Things: Character and Color." So it's talking about the character of students in this college environment.
Are you saying character and color?
Character, as in virtue.
Oh, virtue. Character. Oh, you're talking about me.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Oh man, this came from the Washington Times.
Oh no.
So he starts off saying this. C.S. Lewis told us in the book God in the Dock. He said, "Put first things first, and second things are thrown in. Put second things first, and you lose both first and second things." In his publication titled First Things, Richard John Niehaus warned, "One must never underestimate the profound bigotry and anti-intellectualism of second things." That's a good quote, by the way.
That is very good.
The profound bigotry of anti-intellectualism.
Can we unpack that for a second?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
So an essential property is something that you could not be human, that you could not, if you were missing, you would not be human. That's an essential property. So hair is an accidental property. You can have hair and still not have hair and still be human.
Wow, that's hurtful.
I'm just brought that up. Just wanted to say. An arm, you could be missing an arm and still be human.
Yes.
You could be missing a leg and still be human. Missing an eye or some organ.
You could be somebody like Michael Jackson, who started off one skin color and ended up another skin color.
Sammy Sosa.
Or
Sammy Sosa. Seriously. So these are non-essential properties. Skin color is a non-essential property. How do we know this? There's this group of people called albinos who lack melanin. They're still humans, but they lack skin color. So skin color is not an essential property of humanity. It's an essential property of who you are, like who you are as a person, your skin color.
So it's essential in the sense that it shapes our personality,
all those
worldview.
Right.
It's essential to the way even the culture maybe treats
us,
but not to humanity itself.
Not in terms of humanity itself. It's a non-essential property.
Yeah. So by saying that, it doesn't mean we don't acknowledge the existence of skin color. It's not, oh, I didn't know that you were black.
I didn't know you were black. I'm colorblind.
Yeah,
that's kind of foolish.
I mean, it's whatever.
But what Niehaus is saying is when you elevate these non-essentials to the primary thing, if I elevate my blackness to the primary thing, or Joe's whiteness to the primary, I just wanted to make that point that out. I mean, I'm not trying to be hateful, bro. just being real. No, I'm just saying.
Just saying whiteness is pretty much a microaggression. I'm pretty sure.
So what you saying? No,
but you have the right to say it because.
But anyway, but you elevate these, But these, when you elevate these non-essential things to essential things, then you become bigots and you miss out on a whole lot. Then you begin to lower somebody on the basis of their immutable characteristics, the things about them that cannot change. So,
yeah. So those I thought were great quotes. But he's talking about education now, and he says he's talking about this. Education should be about promoting unity, not division. It's called a university and not a diversity for a reason. Nice little play on words there. Mm-hmm. Classical education, truly liberating education, the liberal ideal, should champion the common cause of personal righteousness and not self-righteousness of personal rights. That's an interesting phrase. It's talking about it should champion this idea of personal righteousness, not self-righteousness of personal rights. In other words, I think what I hear him saying there is we should champion the common idea of human dignity or human sacredness from a Christian perspective, not your right to do something.
Right.
I have a right to say this. Well, yeah, but if your right to say that devalues somebody else, I have a right to say anything I want to. It's a free country, free speech. But if my speech dehumanizes you, then
you have a right to say it. But the question is, should you say it?
Exactly. It doesn't make it a right thing to do. The proper thing to do.
It's using the word rights in an equivocal way.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's important because we have so many people focus on rights, but really not understanding the foundation for those rights, whether even in the Constitution, but also as a Christian, in who God has made us. So he says the goal of the academy should be selflessness, not self, and the unum rather than the pluribus, the one instead of the many. Veritas and virtue, and this instead of victimization and vengeance. So he's contrasting those things. He says this though. He says the fixation on diversity has produced a generation narcissistically unaware of conditions outside their self-defined groups. Mm-hmm. Identity liberalism has failed national politics in healthy periods. Is not about differences, it is about commonality. So, that's essentially what he's writing about, is that I think that last line is pretty good. This generation of narcissistically unaware.
I think what he's really pointing at, in one sense, is that the university should be about bettering us as a society. Mm-hmm. By turning out students who can go out into the world and shape a world that's better for all of us. Mm-hmm. Because Niehaus has at root that the whole point of the university is to move society forward in the sense that it's becoming better for the people who live in society. But a university that's turning out people who are interested in personal rights are shaping leaders for the next generations who are totally and thoroughly interested in themselves and what advances them and those whom they care about, rather than all of us. It's like the latest. I can't remember this gal's name, but this gal, she's actually on trial right now. She's a young 30-something billionaire. She's on trial for faking product. What is it called? Goodness gracious! It was like a cancer drug or something.
Oh, so she faked the results.
The results to get all this money to come into her research, and she literally paid people to come in and falsify documents and to lie.
Wow.
And she's about to go to jail. And
I don't think she was lying about the outcomes. I think she was just. I think she just had her perception.
Her
perception.
Right, but here she got some of the great, industries, Walmart, Google, and all these other people to invest because of these falsified data. And now, she's about to go to jail. But, in the back of her mind, they're going to make her pay, $400 or $500 million. She's going to go to jail for 10 years, if that. And she's going to walk out with $500 million. She'll be 45 years old. She'll be, a recluse and living, and persona non grata, but she'll be $400 and some odd million to the good.
By Michael Jordan's mansion.
Exactly. So for her,
what's a nice place, by the way.
So for her, this was worth it. And in her mind, I'm not saying that, I'm just suggesting that it is, but she's got to look at we have to consider the fact that now you have industries who are investing in her product, thinking that it was going to be, a good deal for them and possibly a good deal for all people, who are now going to be less willing to invest in other people, and people who may have a good deal.
I lost the connection to the story, though. What was the point of that?
Oh, because the whole point of it was that here's a gal who went to Harvard, who went to some of the great schools in our society, who was more interested in her own personal standing.
The selfishness.
The
narcissistic sort of.
The narcissistic sort of thing that the university is breeding now, rather than.
Yeah, we do it.
See how I did that?
That was good. That was nice.
That was
nice that you brought that back. I'm proud of you.
Yeah, thank you.
A couple trips around the barn, but we made it.
There we go.
But, yeah, I think that I think a lot of words use tribalism. And some people use it positively, but this is your tribe or my tribe. But the reality is, it's sort of it's describing a segregation, a self-imposed segregation that is taking place. Ravi Zacharias years ago, he has talks on this, and people can Google these words. He talked about pluralization.
I know exactly the talk you're talking
about. So the idea that many religions, all cultures are equal. They talked about secularization, how you take God out of this mix. You can't have God. You have to have purely God neutral or God negative type things. And then they talk about privatization, where everybody becomes isolated, sort of a little island unto themselves.
It's one of the great talks ever.
I added a fourth one to that over years, and I sort of call it as the Balkanization.
Oh yeah,
I like that.
That's actually very, because now we're separated unto ourselves, and now we're small pockets
that have no connection to each other. So it's one thing to be privatized. It's like everything, your religion has to be personal. Everything is personal. But now we're at a point of balkanization where there is no touch point. So if you are a white,
wait till you see where I take this go. Wait till you see where I take this.
From the South, you're one group. If you are the black, Christian, whatever, from this part of the country or that part, and then
you're this
you
group.
Find ways to keep divided. Now, if you're this group, and then you add your sexual preference in there, or you add money, or you add people just keep dividing, and then somehow people in the other, who are seen as other, don't matter anymore.
That's right.
Because
you have people. California is experiencing one of the largest exodus of people in its history at the very moment, and these people are all moving out of California because, first of all, it's almost impossible to live here anymore because of the cost of living, and secondly, there's a set of values that are being ensconced in the way that California is being run. It's causing people to flee. So ultimately, what you're going to end up with, well, not totally, is you're going to end up with people all segregated, a large group of people who all agree, and then, but there's going to be a large group of people who can't fit into the economic strata that large group of people are in, And then we have, burgeoning homeless population
Oh, yeah.
in California that we've never seen, and the likes we've never seen before. So people are beginning to self-segregate themselves. But I was going to say, and this is why most people are angry with the NFL football players. This is a large reason why they're angry with the NFL football players, because the one thing that we have in common that makes me care about people in Alabama or the people in Pennsylvania or the people in Kentucky is that we're Americans.
Yeah.
And what are the symbols of us being America? The flag is one. It's a big symbol of who we are. The Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, our national anthem. These are the big symbols of the things that make us one people. And when people begin to protest the symbols of the things that make us one people are pointing at them and saying, yeah, you might be protesting because you think that your issue, whatever social issue that you have, is important. And no doubt that it is important. But what people are not making the connection is they're not seeing you raise awareness about your social issue. They're seeing you protest the symbols of the things that make us one people. And they think that you're spitting on those things. So anything else that you say, no matter how valuable you think that it may be, they're not hearing and they're not going to hear because they see you devaluing the thing that makes us one people. The very thing that makes me have to care about your issue, the flag, the fact that we're all in the same country and we're all supposedly in this together, you're devaluing. So if you want to protest, right, and I'm not one to take away a man's right to protest, raise your awareness in another way. I mean, Pac-Man Jones, if you're a football player, Pac-Man Jones said, y'all are detracting from what we're all trying to do. Now, Pac-Man Jones can come out and say that. I think the message is clear.
He really said that?
He literally said on TMZ,
oh
y'all are making a mistake.
Wow.
You can't be protesting the flag.
Taking
and you can't
moral advice from
Pac-Man Jones. Now, Pac-Man Jones, in this, I said to myself after that, boy, somebody has gotten into that guy. Pac-Man Jones. I mean, come on.
Tell people what his
Pac-Man Jones was Dallas Cowboys' #1 pick, and he was just an absolute.
This is 80s,
fool.
right?
No. Early 2000s. Early 2000s.
He's that late? I thought it was
like 2006, 2007.
That's the problem.
And he was the number one pick, and he just stayed in trouble, with the law, arrests, just drama everywhere he went. But now he's in Cleveland, playing ball and thriving, and all of it.
Honestly, I forgot he's still.
He's in the league. I know. He just got into a fight in the
really?
same airport. This guy came at him in the airport.
Man.
So I mean, Pac-Man Jones is saying this is not good. So come on.
Oh.
I mean, if Pac-Man Jones is saying it, it's got to be true.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, we have to have some sort of way of taking out of the many one.
Right.
E pluribus unum kind of thing.
Out
of the many one. And what unfortunately has happened culturally is, we're not going to have in a pluralistic society that be religion, which is fine, actually. Right. I mean, as a Christian, as much as I want all people to come to know faith, have faith in Christ, I don't expect that as a society that everyone's going to share my beliefs in Christ, nor should they be forced to in any way. And they shouldn't be
forced to, and we agree with that.
So we have to have a basis for sharing some sort of some common humanity, some common purpose, or common vision. And like you said, historically, that was the idea of, the flag, or that was a symbol of our commonality, despite our many differences, despite the fact that we see the world differently. We can unify around whatever that thing might be.
I look at it in terms
of we lose those things.
I look at it in terms, and I look at it almost in very visceral terms. You cannot say to people, Black power. Some thinker said, and I think he's right, this is not a symbol of power, right? This is not a symbol of power. This is a symbol that says, if you don't give me what I want, this is what you're going to get. That's not a symbol of power because you're seeking redress from someone else. It's not power. In the same way it's not Asian power, in the same way it's not Mexican power or whatever power. It's somebody in a deficit position saying, if you don't give me what I want, I'm going to cause trouble for you. Well, I mean, that's not power. That's not a position of power. It's a position of violence. So, I mean, if you really want people to care about your issue, you have to show people that you care enough about your own issue too, enough so that you will talk to people who can help you, even though you don't agree with them. Talk to people who can help you, people who've already tread a road that you've already tread down, who can give you good, solid wisdom and advice. And don't be ashamed to say that you don't know, because none of us know. I don't know what Joe knows. Joe doesn't know what I know.
You don't know what I know.
And you don't know what I know. I mean, seriously.
If you knew what I knew,
and if you knew that I knew what you knew that I know that you don't know.
Well,
you see,
that's that drunk argument you just made.
If by whiskey.
Yeah, that's the one.
That's a great fallacy. I mean, I just was reading about it today. It's pretty awesome.
Is there a fallacy that's a fallacy? Like if I said
it's a fallacy fallacy. There's a such thing as a fallacy fallacy.
A fallacy fallacy. That's not a real fallacy.
It's not a real fallacy. It's a fallacy fallacy. It's a fallacy of fallacies.
So I've been on this other story. Change up. Today we're kind of just a range of topics today.
We're just moving.
Get one of these days.
Just moving right. You have like your whole binder.
I got.
You got a binder full of topics.
I got a binder full of topics. Speaking of Mitt Romney.
Exactly.
So I don't know if you saw this one, but this story is almost. I mean, it's just tragic to talk about. So the headline is: Parents punched their 30-week unborn baby to death. Charges unlikely. Did you hear about this one?
I didn't hear about it, but
I got this picture of this woman. But basically, these parents decided that they didn't want to have their 30-week-old, white woman still pregnant, 30 weeks pregnant. They didn't want to have a baby. And so instead of getting an abortion for some reason, maybe they didn't have the money, whatever, I don't know, or maybe just thought, we'll do it on our own. Basically, the boyfriend punched the woman's stomach until the baby died. And then they went to the hospital afterwards. And they said this. They said the medical staff found that the baby girl was suffering from a fractured skull, spinal injuries, traumatic injuries that led to the child's death shortly afterwards. They noticed severe bruising on the woman's stomach and, suspicious of her explanation that she had fallen while mopping, called the police. When I think about that, I mean, just the horrific nature of just standing there and just, I mean, first of all, it's abuse of the woman. I mean, he's punching a woman, but just to get at the baby. But they're not sure at the time of this whether there'd even be any charges. I mean, was it, if she wasn't wanted, I mean, it's not a life. So what would the charges be? But I was grieved by that whole thing, just reading that. And then I also noticed that there was so much, people got genuinely angry about it, but I know some people who were even pro-choice were frustrated by that. And I'm thinking, on what basis does that story upset you? I mean, at worst, it's practicing medicine without a license from a purely pro-choice view. Right? I mean, all he did was do the surgery. He did the doctor's procedure on his own without a license to practice. But I mean, they describe it, the baby girl, fractured skull and stuff. But it's not. It's just a blob of tissue. It doesn't matter. I mean, they'll do partial birth abortion. They half deliver the baby and suck out its brain. Just, that's okay. But when we can't see as a society the evil that this is, that he punched the baby to death while the woman was pregnant, I don't know. I think we may be lost on that issue. And Christians who don't see that frustrate me to no end. I don't know. I don't know what to do that. What are your thoughts on that story and its
insane
implications?
It's insane. It is... It's hard to process.
Yeah,
it is.
That was a hard one to even read.
That was very disturbing. It's hard to process because it shows on one level a callousness for life that is absolutely unimaginable, that you are going to kill your daughter or your son And the next question is, why? Number one, because the state allows it.
Yeah.
The state allows you to kill a baby just based on its location.
Yeah. It's inside the mother's womb, but if they'd have done that to her
anywhere outside the mother's womb,
30 minutes after she was born, 30 seconds after the baby's born,
right.
If the parents would have said, I don't want this, and smacked the kid, bashed them around until they died, they'd be arrested.
Right.
But if he does, as long as it's still inside the womb, it's okay. You talk about your non-sequitur. It just doesn't make sense to me. I'm grieved by that whole thing.
Yeah. I guess I comfort myself with this. The state may not do anything to that man or to that woman, but that man and that woman will stand before the Lord and have to give an account for their wickedness one day. And they just absolutely will. So I find comfort in that. But secondly, it disturbs me that
I'm not sure I do find comfort in that.
Oh,
I'm just speaking honest. I mean, I know that it's true, but it's just...
Oh, I do, because I have to believe that there is a day that we all have to give an account for all the deeds that we've done in the flesh. And I have to believe, because the Bible teaches it, that God will require... It says, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. And I think he'll require it from those people. What he'll require, I don't know, but I know that he's the judge. It reminds me of this time I was driving down the freeway, and I was a taxi driver at the time. And you think of weird things when you're a taxi driver, but I had this guy in the back of my car.
I didn't know you were a taxi driver.
Who did not speak English, and he had a 44 revolver on his lap.
Oh, gosh.
I'm not kidding you. I picked this guy up from the train station, and he was dropped off there by a group of his friends, and I was taking him to the border. He didn't speak English at all, and he proceeds to pull out this gun, this 44 revolver, and it's about that big. It's the old school with the wooden handle and a really long barrel.
Clint Eastwood kind
of. My gosh! So he pulled it on. He says, "No problem." He says, "No problem" in English. Like, no problem, because I can't sit here with this big gun in my waist. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I got to take it out. That's what he's saying. And I'm like, you know what? Okay. Because at that point I was really just, it didn't matter. So as I was driving down the freeway with this guy in the back seat of my car and his revolver sitting on his lap, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, Jeffrey Dahmer killed those people.
Oh, God.
No. Jeffrey Dahmer killed those people. And he ate them. And Jeffrey Dahmer had given this interview with, and this is why the guy is sitting in my car.
Do you prefer chicken? Do you prefer your dark or light meat?
Exactly. Yeah. So, but I'm sitting here, but it's really interesting. So I'm thinking of this as I'm driving down the freeway, afraid that this guy's going to shoot me in the back of the head.
Oh, my gosh.
And this thought comes in my mind that, Jeffrey Dahmer killed those people. And it's possible that Jeffrey Dahmer supposedly repented. I don't know, but that's what I hear. That are repentant. It's possible that he's in heaven, and it's possible that the people that he ate and killed are not in heaven. And what's causing me to think of my mortality is the fact that this guy's sitting in back of me with this gun. And I started to think about it all the way down there. That, yep, it's possible that Jeffrey Dahmer's in heaven, and it's possible that these men that he killed will not be in heaven because of the lifestyles that they lead. It was very difficult for me to reconcile it, but I thought to myself at that moment, each of those men will have to stand before God for the deeds done in the flesh. And Jeffrey Dahmer will have to stand before God before the deeds done in the flesh. And God is the judge, the rightful judge, who will make the rightful decisions on that basis. And I was thinking that the whole time, because I was thinking, if this guy shoots me in the back of the head, on the way to the border,
because you'll be dead. Because I don't do anything much about it.
So that's an interesting story in and of itself. But I was thinking about that day.
It is comforting only in this sense. I mean, not in the moment. I don't.
No, in the moment, I don't think so either.
I think comforting in the sense that if you lean in and trust that God is going to find a way to make things right that are now wrong, you are not compelled to take action on your own. In other words, you don't need to have vigilante justice to solve an unjust thing.
Right.
Because if God's going to be the great equalizer and all those things,
that doesn't mean that we skip by justice systems or any of that. I'm just saying
that's what I'm saying. We don't have to then go like, I got to go have, this guy did something bad. He's not going to he got off the courts. I've got to go kill that person.
It doesn't mean that we don't lament because of the wrongness of the situation. I think even in that moment, I was really wrestling with how is it that these men met their fate for all eternity at the hands of this guy who was as much a monster as they were. The major difference was he got a chance to repent. And then I had to reconcile that it's not my sense of justice or my sense of ill will or my sense of righteousness that needs to be satisfied, because I'm not God and it's not my law. And these are not my standards. These are his. It's God's sense of righteousness and justice and laws that need to be satisfied. And if Jeffrey Dahmer repents of his sins, then who am I to say to God that you're wrong for allowing Jeffrey Dahmer to to into heaven? And who am I to say to God you're wrong for adjudicating these men whom he killed fate? In the same way with this couple here, they may escape the hands of justice in this lifetime. They may live a long, happy, and a fruitful life from this point on, while that baby is dead. I lament the loss of that baby. I lament the loss of righteousness, of righteous anger in our country, where we will allow a situation like this to go unpunished. I lament that, and there's nothing apart from me going out and praying, number one, and two, voting to get this law repealed so that people like this can be brought to justice. But until that happens, I have to, in order to have a sane view of the world, try to reconcile this with saying that it can't be me in this situation that fixes this problem. This problem is ridiculous. It has to be God.
Yeah, as I read, for me it was just aside from the sorrow of the events itself, was just an illustration of just such great moral confusion,
right? Without
any God to guide us, who determines our nature of being and who we are in Christ, from our creation and ultimately as Christians to Christ, but just that created nature that we are, and gives us an objective moral standard by which we can judge things. Mm-hmm. Here's another one of confusion, and this will probably be our last couple stories. I have two stories to compare that I thought were interesting. So I read this story. I didn't actually get it printed out, but I talked about it last night in my ethics class. I talked about these two stories. I've got the headlines on a slide now because I think these are fascinating juxtaposition of two things that are morally confusing to people, or illustrates that confusion. So there was a guy the other day who he's a world-renowned herpetologist, studies those lizards. He loves those lizards, and so he studies them. He's been doing this stuff forever. And he received this prestigious herpetologist achievement award. You didn't even know there was such a thing, but now
I did not.
So he gets this award. Now he's showing his slideshow to get this award. And in the slideshow are the young women who are the grad assistants that are helping do the digs and all the stuff that they do, all the digging up the bones and things and doing the research. And apparently, where lizards live, it's warm. So they were wearing like bikini tops, and bathing suit stuff. So he's showing the pictures of these women who are somewhat scantily clad, and apparently the people who he'd given the slideshow, they put these like blue boxes over the women's upper body there because they, when they censor, like a little censor thing. But I'm saying he didn't make up the pictures. I mean, they were women who were wearing those outfits doing the job, so he didn't make it up. But apparently there was such outrage. People laughed that he would put up these women in their bathing suits, even though they chose him. It wasn't like he was forcing his students to wear these things.
Yeah, they chose to do that.
He wasn't accused of molesting any of them or, sexual harassment. Like he just had pictures of them. And so, but this is so egregious that the next day they revoked his award. And they said, you can't have the award because your slides didn't reflect our values for women, I guess, or some such thing. Because they were scantily clad. So let me phrase it in a way that's obvious. So scantily clad women is morally wrong to put pictures of them up. What argument does that, who took that same view in say the 60s and 70s regarding magazine publications.
Oh my gosh, yeah, the women themselves.
Well, yeah, wasn't it Christians who said of Hugh Hefner?
Oh, well.
That's what I was thinking. Like, hey, you're dehumanizing, devaluing women. What were Christians told when they tried to, say, hey, you should, this is wrong to put women out like this, and what were Christians told by the feminists and by the, the people that, outside the Christian circle?
Well, you're dehumanized. Well, the feminists were for women being women, and wearing whatever they wanted to wear and being whatever
it's
they
freedom.
wanted to be.
They wear whatever they want.
I remember I was in the hospital around this time and the nurses across. I was in the hospital and my room overlooked the nurses that were all graduating from in this big building across the way. And the large tradition for the nurses where they were to take their bras off and string them together and hang them from one building all the way to the other building across the street. I mean, seriously, that many nurses were graduating. And this was like their tradition. It was kind of weird. I mean, don't get me wrong, but it was weird. But that's what they did.
Okay.
And that was, I think that's got to be 77, 70, 75, right around there. It was tradition.
Wow.
And that was they were being free to be
free, burn the bras,
to do whatever because this was their deal.
Well, see, that's what I think is so ironic about this story. It's like how we've come full circle. So Christians were wrong to impose their moral standard of dress on the culture. Women should be able to wear what they want, put up any pictures they want. There's no standard. There's no right and wrong. Yet now a guy puts up pictures wearing what women chose to wear, and he's now the morally wrong for. I don't understand on what basis he was. I guess that's what my confusion is, because I thought all along that Christians were wrong for saying women should dress modestly. So they're saying women should dress whatever they want, but
he's wrong in their eyes because he's a man, and it looks like he's objectifying women.
Which is what Christians said. You're objectifying women.
Yeah.
And then the argument back from Playboy was, well, they agreed to
be this,
to do these pictures. Well, those women agreed to have their picture taken because they were on a dig. It's like it's a moral conundrum. Now, here's the other story that I think is interesting. So this is from a Christian gal who went to a very conservative school, and her argument is that Christian modesty rules, wearing the dress up, contribute to the rape culture. So by forcing women to, or by saying women, you got to wear the dresses and cover up and stuff, it contributes to the objectification of women.
Can I say something?
So
about
I
this?
don't totally disagree in part, but
can I say something about this? I mean, as I listen to these stories, right, and there's a very, very interesting thread here.
Okay.
And here's the thread. With the proliferation of the internet, social media, and anyone being able to get on in front of a screen or in front of a landing page or in front of a website and say anything that they want, there's just no standards for anything. I mean, you can't
that might
be
apply
right.
To this very show.
You can't be right for. I know, but I'm being honest.
I know, I'm just saying.
But you can't be right for being wrong.
That's what I'm getting at.
That's what I'm saying about this. Is
Christians
so insane.
were wrong to judge Hefner because women have the right to be naked, and it's not objectification. A herpetologist can't put women up in clothing that they chose to wear because that's objectification. If you ask women to put on clothes so that that's objectification.
It's insanity.
And all of it contributes to rape culture. And so basically, everything anybody does, whether you choose to wear no clothes or some clothes,
somebody's going to be offended.
Somebody's offended. You're still contributing to the rape culture. You're still at fault, and you're wrong. That's what it's like dizzying. That's what I was getting at when I was reading these things.
It's insane.
And I like I said, even in this specific story, I do think ethically, I think there's a problem I have with these sort of legalistic rule setting and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But that's a different issue than what I'm trying to point it out here. Is like that we're bringing out here is like that. Just that.
Who wrote? Can you say who wrote this article?
Let's see.
Who is this person?
Her name is Jory Micah.
And she's an expert in cultural mores.
She's a Christian who went to a Christian school.
Oh, okay,
and
so
she has a blog.
That makes her an expert.
Well, yeah, she's an expert.
Okay.
So
that's insane.
But that's the thing is, I think everybody just wants to say, I found something that bugs me. and now I'm going to say it contributes to some massive ill, and I've got the buzzword of the day.
I was thinking,
but in the end, there's no rational basis for how all those things. What's your solution? Yeah. Well, we should have no dress code. Okay, so dress whatever way you want. No, there's no standard. Right. Well, okay, so then I take a picture, and hey, here's our graduation with people half naked and some fully dressed.
Clad.
Oh, you're objectifying the people because you took a picture during the time they chose to dress that way, and it's like, okay, that's wrong. And
I just think that we have more people who are just pointing out, who just want to have some influence to say that something is wrong, and we're not really looking long-term at the long-term ramifications of an article like that.
Yeah.
Right? What is the long-term ramifications of an article that wants to argue that Christian modesty rules contribute to rape culture? So being modest contributes to rape culture. How?
Exactly. Well, enforcing modesty because you're making something, because you're making, here's the thing.
There's no connection. It's a non sequitur.
It's the same thing that goes up with.
I'm going to read that article
I'll give you.
I want to go to her website and just say
I'll let you
are
have that copy.
Stupid. I don't want to say that. I won't do that.
Think about this. All the stuff with sexual harassment that's going on.
Me Too.
Trump and the Me Too and all those other kind of stuff. All those things that are terrible. Horrible, horrible, because Trump objectified women and he groped them and he grabbed them. And, just even the charge of it is serious. At the same time, that's criticized. Mike Pence, who's the vice president,
who says, I don't want to be anywhere with a single woman.
I always have my wife with me, or I have somebody else. I'm never alone. Oh, he's saying that all women are wrong and all women are whatever. He's objectifying women. He's demeaning them because he doesn't trust them to be his thing. But if you have a guy who says, I'm mentoring women, and the woman, and he says, hey, you look nice today, that's offensive. But if a guy has somebody there to witness it, that's offensive because you have a witness there. There's no winning for trying. Is the problem we're at. We're at such a corrosive point in everything we do. There is no way to win, no matter what choice you make. And that's a dangerous place to be.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to bring Trump into the whole thing, but it's just sort of the same thing. In one sense, if he stood and said Putin is a bad man and he tried to spy on us,
he meddled in our
elections, he'd get vilified in the press of
no,
Trump attacks Putin for whatever.
No.
But then if he doesn't, then he says
he's a bad guy. Here's that whole thing that's really interesting. And not to get into that, beating that horse.
No, I don't know.
But he's standing next to Putin, right? Let's look at who Trump is. Trump is a narcissist. He is what he is. That's what he is. Sure. Trump, love him some Trump, right? He's standing next to Putin, and somebody asks him, look, did the Russians meddle in our elections, right? Now, knowing that if he agrees with that guy who asked that question, standing next to Putin on the stage, what he's literally saying is, the Russians put me in office. There's no way on God's green earth you would get Trump to admit that at that moment because he doesn't believe it.
It's all
but it's just
but
it's a lot.
The other point is, without it's just that you can't win for trying. There was a joke years ago. If the reporters today had seen Jesus, walk on water, the headline the next day would be, breaking news: Jesus can't swim.
Yes.
It's that old saw.
It's that bad.
And that's where we are in all these stories.
Right.
That's the depressing part about it. And so let's quit on that depressing note. We're out of time. But I guess that's the theme. Just so many of these things we talk about is everybody wants to be a victim of something. And everybody wants to tie any issue becomes the issue.
Right.
And because truth is determined by perception, and somebody who is always going to perceive what you did wrongly, therefore you're always wrong.
And all of this because we've done away with standards. We've done away with righteousness in our country. Oh. We've excised God out of the equation. God who anchored right from wrong. In other words, right was always going to be right and wrong was always going to be wrong. We've pushed him out of the picture, and now every man has gone his own way, and everyone is the arbiter of what is
Everyone was right in his own eyes.
And is right in their own eyes. And that is where we are. That is exactly where we are. So we don't have a standard to which we can point to and say that's true north. So this is true north, and that is true north, and that is true north. Nothing is beginning to make sense.
That's your truth. That's your north.
Yeah.
That's your north.
Yeah.
That's my north.
You know what I say? You know what I say to those people who say such things? Shut up.
That's your truth.
That's my truth. I'm just kidding.
That's not true. All right. Well, we'll be back next week.
Next week,
we might
Wednesday.
have Ward Cracker with us next week.
Well, you know what? We don't need Ward Cracker anymore. We have 8 seconds. This is an 8-second crack on Ward Cracker. We don't need you anymore. It's psych. We really want you to come back, Ward.